You are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul. Our theme music is a clip of Summer Nights by the Eric Jones Trio. It's provided by our friend Mark Chesanout, who plays with the Eric Jones Trio every Thursday and Sunday at Good Times Jazz Bar downtown.
Hey everyone, welcome to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey, and I have the pleasure of sitting down with photographer Nathaniel Thompson today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So glad to have you. Thank you for having me in your lovely studio. So I'm going to read a little bit from Nathaniel's website. It says, Thompson is a multidisciplinary artist who specializes in photography, primarily using vintage analog devices. And then it says that you find your inspiration through your current geographical location, road trips, and historical reenactments. So I just wanted to start off, it says on your site that you were born in Thailand. How and when did you arrive in Savannah?
My parents were missionaries, and we moved from Chiang Mai, Thailand, when I was really young, about 1 or 2 years old. And then I lived in Alabama and Georgia for the rest of my life, growing up mainly in St. Simon's.
Oh, okay. You went to high school in St. Simon's?
Yeah, at Glen Academy.
Okay. And then what brought you to Savannah?
I moved to Savannah maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just kind of, I hadn't been to Savannah a lot. When I grew up, I usually went down to Jacksonville because it seemed closer.
Okay. For your friends to do fun things, you go to Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Savannah was only half an hour more, so I started hanging out around here, and then I started looking at all the buildings and just fell in love with the city.
Yeah. Did you kind of start, when did you discover that you were into photography and taking photos of kind of abandoned southern quirky nostalgic things?
The southern element came later. My father and both my grandparents were photographers too, or they still are, and I started shooting really early on. I think I got my first camera in 2003.
How old were you then?
I think 6.
Okay.
So really, really young.
What kind of camera was that?
It was a digital Kodak point and shoot.
Okay.
But then I always had a camera with me, and I was always taking photos and participating in the school photo contests and that sort of thing.
You were kind of like the one at school off to the side. You were documenting things.
I was always the photographer.
What kind of photography did your dad do?
I know he did portraiture in the beginning, but then he started doing ad work. Now he's a graphic designer.
Oh, okay, cool.
So more ad driven, but
was he doing film photography? Maybe,
back when
before
everyone
you were
does.
born. Yeah. Would you guys have a darkroom at your house or anything, or?
No, he would have done it at he went to Portfolio Center in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
So it was with the school.
And then, so when kind of digital cameras came out, and that's what he bought you when you were 6 years old, he was transitioning into that new technology too. He was doing that.
Yeah.
Would you guys kind of go out together and do shoots?
Sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember that, but I know that he helped me with getting ready for the contest, so I know I learned a lot about composition and shooting and just taking good photos that way.
What kind of contests?
It was reflections, so I think it was the PTA run art contest.
Okay.
So it was school or county-wide and then statewide and nationwide, and you could have all the different photography and visual art and writing, and I would just enter each contest because there was no cap. So I would enter all of them and usually win a lot of them.
What, for the county? For what would you win?
For school and state, and then
you win?
County's where I stopped.
Okay.
I never made it to national.
What were your photos like then that you were entering in high school?
Not what I'm taking now. More people and street photography centric.
Mm-hmm.
and that was also all on digital. So I think I started coming into my element and understanding what I'm shooting now when I moved to shoot on film.
So back then when you were doing digital and then entering any contests, were you getting them printed out at like when people used to go to CVS or something and get things printed out? What was the technology like then?
Yeah, I do remember going to the CVS and then putting in the card and then getting a big packet of 4x6s.
Yeah, I remember that little SD card. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then you're entering those photos. Cool. So were you thinking at that time, were you like already imagining in high school that was what you wanted to continue doing as your job, as when you quote grew up?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed photography and I've really cared about it a lot, and it's always been what I've wanted to do. There hasn't really been a question about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to have. I feel like very few people when either their parents are doing something artistic for their career, so it actually seems possible.
Yeah, no, they've always been both my parents are artistic and they've both been very supportive.
That's cool. So you arrived to Savannah just on your own, you just moved here. It wasn't for SCAD, right?
No, yeah, I haven't gone to college yet. That's still plans in the future.
So when you got here, did you know anyone?
I did have some friends who had gone to SCAD and they lived here.
Yeah, I would think from St. Simon's, I guess a good amount of people would come here, right?
Yeah, so I had a few friends who moved, because we all went to high school together, so I knew them, but that was about it.
Where did you live when you first got here?
I was commuting a lot. It was more transient. I was going between Savannah and St. Simon's until I moved in with my partner and roommate, I think like 3 or 4 blocks from here.
Okay, and we're on the east side of Savannah. Yeah. What's your connection to Brunswick?
I used to really dislike it growing up, but I think we all kind of don't like where we grew up at the time. But I had spent a good time away from Brunswick, kind of road tripping around the United States. And when I came back, I started to appreciate it more and just like see it more for the history and the people who lived there rather than just the stinky city that I grew up in.
Okay. So tell me about this road trip. What was that? How?
Yeah, so I had gone to Georgia State in 2016, and then that really wasn't working for me. I was going for a film, like cinema, and that is not at all what I want to be doing, which I realized.
Did it feel too commercial?
It felt like I was too far away from the end product. Like I really enjoy what I'm working on, and I want to have a lot of input and direction on it, and it just felt like I would be working on someone else's project.
Yeah, just too many people who are involved in the final.
Yeah. So I spent some time away from school, and then I decided that I would just see the rest of the U.S. just because I hadn't, and I had my own car, and I had gotten my first film camera that same year. And then I just went and drove, starting in Ohio, and then I just made my way across the eastern seaboard all the way back to Brunswick.
You went by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up starting in Ohio?
I had a ex who moved up there who needed all their stuff moved.
Okay.
So I U-hauled it up there and pulled my car behind me.
Cool. And then so you planned, you were like, and then I'm going to take off across the country?
Yeah.
All right, so it's just you and your film camera.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you sleep at night?
In the back of my car.
Oh, just on the side of the road?
Sometimes at Walmart, sometimes at a gas station.
Huh.
Yeah, there wasn't really any planning. It was just waking up and figuring out where to go next.
Were you going to cities or small town? Like, what were you?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
I know I went to Rochester, New York, and I stopped over at the Niagara Falls.
Okay.
And then I went through New York and went to Philadelphia and Baltimore and just kind of all the places I've been hearing about, but I've never actually seen.
That seems, very intimidating for you. You grew up just on this island, and then you just take off on your own driving, and you're going through New York and Philadelphia and everything.
Yeah, I think I was stir crazy, so it didn't feel intimidating at the time.
Really? So did you park in New York and spend some time walking around there, or what was that like?
Oh, I just drove straight through it.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, but that seemed a little too daunting.
It was too much, yeah. I mean, the fact that you drove through New York that's pretty brave.
Yeah, I got to see the buildings and just kind of skip over, and I think I ended up I think it was in Pennsylvania after that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a tough trip, but I'd see a lot of my inspiration came from it too, because I also got to see all these different buildings and architecture and just different ways people lived that I wasn't used to, and I got to just start noticing also the similarities, I guess, like different things that people kind of put in their front yard, or people, like how they choose to present their homes.
What are some things that you thought were similar?
Mailbox art, which I think is a pretty funny one. There's a lot of people who will have a very, relatively normal quote unquote house, but then they just have the craziest mailbox.
Huh.
And cats and fish and flamingos, and that's all over the US.
Ah, I like that. So when you were driving, would you just you're driving, and if you see something interesting, you just would pull over and do some shooting, or what were your days like on the road?
It was mainly that. Sometimes there was a few places I'd picked out, like art museums I wanted to see, but mainly it was just driving and stopping when I wanted to, and having no plan or itinerary really gave me a lot of that freedom just to kind of go wherever my eye took me.
Yeah. How many days total did you do that for? Or weeks?
Oh, I don't know. I think I started late summer and ended sometime after Thanksgiving.
Wow. Were you literally sleeping in your car every single night, or did you ever get a motel?
I'd stayed with relatives for a couple nights in Baltimore, and that was great because that was I got to have a shower.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best shower I ever had.
That's a really long time to just be by yourself driving.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, so tell me again, so you started in Ohio, and you were on the East Coast, you were in New York, and then how far west did you go?
I didn't go west at all.
Okay.
I still have yet to go west.
Okay, got it. So you kind of went up to Niagara Falls and then back down through...
and just kind of meandered.
Okay. What was kind of like a surprising, like a really pleasant surprise anywhere that you saw?
When I was outside of Niagara Falls, I was camping out at the gas station, and I woke up that morning and I couldn't see out of my windows, and it turned out that there was a surprise snow flurry during the night, so everything was blanketed in snow, and I had never driven in snow before, so it was a whole bunch of just figuring out what to do, where to go next. But then I ended up going to this big park that was down the street to walk around and take photos, and this woman with 2 giant huskies just came out of nowhere, and we started talking, and it turns out that she had just moved from St. Simon's over there. So that was a really cool connection to kind of see that someone was from where I was from, and I feel like that kind of let me know it was time to head back.
Oh yeah? That's cool. So did you spend a lot of time driving around in the South? Is that where you started on your current track of doing a lot of kind of abandoned small southern town photography?
Yeah, that started coming after, because my year at Georgia State made a lot of friends in Atlanta, so I started regularly going up from Brunswick to Atlanta and doing that multiple times in a month. And just being on the road so many times, I just started drifting left and right and just kind of exploring all the other places around the South.
Yeah, because it's a boring drive if you go straight. If you just do 16 and 95
Yeah.
straight there is so boring. So you like to meander and go on the small roads,
I do.
and then you just kind of pull over. You see something cool.
Yeah, it's definitely two different types of driving. There's driving when I have to get somewhere, and then driving for taking photos, because
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get somewhere if you're stopping all the time.
So you maybe, I would imagine you are seeing a lot of houses with quirky mailboxes
Yeah,
in this route.
and a lot of folk art too, which I really got connected to just traveling around Georgia and Alabama, because there's a really rich history of outsider artists and using the materials you have and reclaiming stuff and making it into art, and it always made me happy to see, because it didn't really feel like there was an agenda behind it. It was just to making art and bringing joy.
Have you been to Howard Finster's Paradise Garden?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite places.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. So I looked on your website. You kind of have a list of the different equipment that you use, and it's analog photography, and it's things like digital cameras and 35 millimeter camera, and then also 1980s slide projectors.
Yeah.
How do you get your hands on these things?
I'm going to estate sales, and I'm thrifting all the time. I've always been at thrift stores as long as I can remember, so it's kind of digging through all this ephemera and all this stuff from people, and estate sales especially, because you kind of just step into someone's life and it's kind of on full presentation for you.
Yeah. Does an estate sale, so I would imagine like when you're going out into the countryside that it's kind of a lot of like yard sales and junk sales and thrift stores and stuff, but an estate sale I always think of as being like a very urban thing, like it's sort of a wealthy person's house. Is that right, or am I imagining that?
Oh no, they're everywhere.
Okay.
So that's a cool thing too, because you really do get to see all walks of life. Like I was just at one in the middle of downtown just this past weekend, which was in an old Victorian home and full of really cool antiques. But I've also been to some that are way out in the countryside that like they have their own land and big barn, and like I got to see like all the kind of the country living too.
So it's basically just it's some relative who's just like opened up the house and everybody kind of walks through and picks things.
And sometimes there's plenty of companies who also will do it for you if you don't want to manage it on your own.
Yeah,
'cause it's a lot of work. Are
you kind of always going to these sales looking for things, or are you looking for things to make art with, or you keep looking for new cameras?
I've stopped buying cameras for the time being. I feel like there was a lot of buying and selling until I found the right camera for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of my practice. I find material and objects that I can work into my photography or work into an installation. So I'm always looking. Do you mean that like you find objects and then you're taking the photo of that, or like the finished object is the photo combined with objects? Both.
Okay. Can you describe, what's the 35 millimeter camera? Can you kind of describe that for us?
Yeah, so I shoot on a couple 35 millimeter cameras. They're analog film, which is a photo sensitive emulsion on kind of like a piece of plastic, and when you take a photograph, the camera opens up to light and projects an image from what's in front of it onto the film, and then the film captures it, and then you get to develop it into a real photo.
Where are you getting things developed nowadays?
I send my stuff off to Photo Life in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
I want to start developing at home, but that's a whole nother thing that I got to get going.
Is it pretty easy? I mean, if you just have the room, like a windowless room, is it pretty easy to be buying the chemicals and things online? Or are people still like producing that stuff easily?
You can still get it local too. Like I know that Starlandia has some, and
oh cool.
Developing was daunting to me until I was with Monica and Adam from the Domatic photo art.
Yeah.
And I was able to go into their dark room, and they were able to show me the process.
Oh, that's great. So that was as recently as you actually saw like photo being developed?
Yeah, that was the first time I was a part of it.
That's amazing. Did you get to see their camera being used at all?
Yeah, and they taught me how to use the 4x5 that I have, so I want to start working that into my process too.
That's very cool. I love that. I kind of like the idea you guys could almost do a mashup because you're sort of taking photos of places and they're taking photos of people.
Yeah.
I like that could be a really good collaboration between you guys in a show.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And then the 1980s slide projectors, that's intriguing too. How easy is it to get a slide projector and to get like new slide film?
It used to be easier to get projectors. I used to find them at thrift stores all the time.
Yeah.
Now they seem to be more either niche or they're harder to find just because maybe there's less of them. But I use a lot of found photos and found slides in my work.
Okay.
And Kodak still makes a slide film too.
They do? Okay. When I was in SCAD, it was like 4,000 years ago, and we did actually, when we'd have to present certain things, we had to like take slides of our work and present it as like this carousel,
so
like
cool.
hand over a carousel of like slides of our work. So I guess that was in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, that was still going on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do you go to Bay Camera ever?
I do.
Like, do they kind of like fix cameras, or they develop?
Oh,
what are
they do
doing?
everything.
Okay.
They're a great place. They're really good for buying film and for buying cameras, and they have a whole lab, so they also develop.
They do.
I'm just pretty particular with how I want my stuff.
Yeah.
It's really a one-stop shop. They even got the old drop box out front where you can just drop your
That's
film
cute.
and come back and pick it up.
In that little paper envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember all that. And I did want to ask, in one of your photos, the description was called lomography. What is that? Is that the type of camera?
Oh, that's a type of film.
Okay.
Lomography is a big camera company, and they also have a selection of film stocks they make, as well as films for older cameras that aren't used anymore.
Is that a particular look to that kind of film that people would choose to use it?
I think so. It's definitely I started using it just because it was a cheaper film, but I really liked the look of it because it was it felt true to life to me, very like straight on with bold colors, and I'm majorly shoot in daylight, so I liked the look and I stuck with it.
Are there certain films that people would choose if they were doing nighttime versus daytime?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different films out there to try that all give you a kind of a different look, so it's fun to try new stuff and experiment, and every once in a while a new film comes onto the market, so that's always exciting.
Oh, really? Still?
Not as much, but
That's interesting. I didn't know that would be happening at all.
yeah, I'm hoping it keeps happening more, and it seems like people have got into film again.
Yeah.
There's been a big resurgence.
Are you able to repair cameras at all? Are you like a tinkerer?
Yeah, I probably know more than the layman.
You probably do. I'm sure you do. Great. Well, this is Nathaniel Thompson, local photographer and mixed media artist. And this is a good point. We're going to take a little station break, and we'll be right back.
You are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.
Trees are one of Chatham County's most treasured natural resources. Beyond their beauty and cultural significance, the impact of trees are far-reaching and compounding, spanning from economic benefits to health improvements to climate change resilience. Trees are woven into every aspect of our lives. Savannah Tree Foundation protects and grows Chatham County's urban forest through tree planting, community engagement, and advocacy. More information is available at savannahtree.org. This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have online ordering and curbside delivery available, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we're a voice for the community. It also means that we're counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
Hey, welcome back to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey, and I'm sitting with local photographer Nathaniel Thompson.
Hello.
Welcome back. So I wanted to start out, we touched a little bit about the actual concepts of your work and how you took this months-long road trip around the eastern U.S., and you've developed into where you're doing lots of nostalgic photos of kind of small-town Americana and the South in particular, and kind of the quirkiness of it, and your interest in folk art and outsider art. Can you talk a little bit about, so you said you moved here from Thailand and you lived in Alabama and Georgia. Like, are these kind of memories that you have as a child of seeing these things of America, or is it more like you kind of like imagining what it might have been like because you weren't actually living here at the time?
I think it was more of a rediscovery, because I usually felt more like an outsider growing up. So it was interesting to kind of see this place as like, because I always explored. I did a lot of urban exploration and like getting into old abandoned places. So just kind of treating Georgia in the South as this territory that I can look around and discover new things, and specifically with how quickly development is happening now in the South, going to see these things before they're gone, because you can tell it very well in Savannah, but just how quickly things change and morph and turn into something different, and you blink and it disappears. So I've been really trying to make it my effort to capture and document all these things.
Yeah. Do you think this is going on? I mean, so it sounds like you kind of have experience with the whole Southeast and Georgia in particular, because that's where we live. Do you feel like there's differences amongst the other states, like Mississippi and Alabama? Do you think there's more going on in Georgia lately?
It might just be because that's where I am. I'm sure it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's another, I won't know until I go over and take photos of it.
I mean, it does seem like for the last few elections that politically there's a lot of changes going on in Georgia. Like, there's more people moving to Georgia from other cities, and so Georgia has more cities in it than the other southern states, and so there's sort of more of a political shifting happening in the last few years.
Yeah, and then you've also got the tax breaks for film, which I feel like has done a lot to help Georgia's economy.
Yeah.
But then you also have a lot more transplants, and there's definitely a big shift happening.
Yeah, so there's maybe more of an ethos in Georgia as opposed to the other states of just like the new people coming in maybe don't have as much of a tie to the old quirky nostalgic buildings and things.
Yeah, but I also know that Georgia has always been going through kind of rebuilding and rebirth, and from just talking to people, I know that there's still animosity towards Sherman and what he did, burning down Atlanta and Georgia. So it's like Georgia's always kind of been going through tumultuous teardowns and building backups. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next.
That's interesting. Where have you been where you get into these conversations with people about that?
That's been at historical reenactments. I used to participate at Fort King George doing the colonial reenactments, and when I used to work for a publishing company, I used to shoot videos that were for the tourism and the Chamber of Commerce. So I would go to different state parks and make commercials about them, and I visited a lot of historical places where people would just be getting into that.
That sounds like a really interesting job. Where was that, in Brunswick?
Yeah, it was on St. Simon's. It was, the company's now called 365 Degree Total Marketing.
Okay.
And it's kind of a one-stop shop too for all advertising. So I did that while I was in high school.
Wow. So you're really following in your father's footsteps since he was doing commercial photography.
It was the same company he was working at.
I kind of didn't realize that there were like such specific artistic opportunities like that in somewhere small like St. Simon's.
Yeah, St. Simon's is a small place, but there's still a lot going on. We've even got like a little glass shop, which I find really cool.
Yeah. So that was, so you were being tasked with doing these films of historical reenactments, and you were driving around and shooting and interviewing people?
Yeah. It was for the state park, so it'd be like the videos you'd see at the rest stops.
Like a thing that plays in a loop
Yeah.
on the background kind of thing?
So that's also where I got my start, just being able to see different parts of Georgia.
Yeah. And you were in high school doing that?
Yes.
So how hard was that for you to go around and just introduce yourself to adults and ask them to talk to you about their thoughts about Georgia?
I was always shy, but I feel like I've always kind of gotten along with adults when I was younger, so it wasn't, I think that was easier for me than navigating high school.
Yeah. And you said even in high school you were kind of always behind the camera?
Yeah. I'm grateful for that opportunity. It really moved me forward into just appreciating Georgia.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned that you have always had an affinity for outsider art, and you kind of saw yourself as an outsider. Was that just like in high school when everybody is, do you still feel like that?
No, not anymore. Especially living in Savannah now, there's such a vibrant artistic community.
Yeah.
And a really great music scene too. So it's fun how big and fast this place can be, but it also feels like a very small town where
Yeah.
you kind of go out for groceries and you are bound to see someone you know.
I love that too. Yeah, and there's room for quirky people.
Yeah.
High school is rough in that sense.
Definitely.
I think maybe years later when you talk to people, everybody thought of themselves as an outsider, even the insider people. I wanted to talk a little bit about, so when you're shooting, so you're doing both digital cameras and 35 millimeter cameras, which are film cameras. Are you doing any post-production or editing or something in the finals, or do you just like shoot something and then the image is there and then that's what it is?
I try my best to compose the image in camera, so I'm shooting on 35 millimeter medium format 120 film, and I'm now starting to learn 4x5 large format film, but I'm not printing anything in the darkroom. It is all being scanned and processed on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel any certain way about editing film photos. I feel like all photographers have edited film work, so I'm not a stickler. It doesn't have to be straight out of the camera.
Yeah.
The final image is what matters most.
Do you do anything color-wise when you get them back?
Not much.
Okay.
And that's also why I shoot on film. I feel like the film is doing a lot of that work for me.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that would be. Like, you get photos back in the mail and then you'd have to like scan them and Photoshop and do tweaks to the colors or something. I mean, that seems weird.
Yeah, well, they send you digital files now, so it's real easy.
Interesting. Is there a thing, so there's like a particular look to just old photos and old Polaroids and things where the colors are like, they just weren't super saturated. Is that because over time things have degraded, or is it literally just that like the film from that era is only capable of a certain level of saturation?
It's probably from degradation, because there's a film that a lot of people miss, which is Kodachrome, and it's known as like the truest to life, the brightest colors, like the most amazing like film for documenting the world.
Okay. I know it as the Paul Simon song.
Yeah, it was, I think they discontinued it sometime around the early thousands. So if you come across some of those photos, It's just kind of otherworldly.
So that would have been around like since the 60s, just in the big
Yeah.
era of film. Okay. So at the time, there was this one brand that existed that was really, really colorful, but just, I guess like most people were shooting on kind of all of my memories of photos that my family has from that era, it just is like a certain level of washed outness that's really interesting.
Yeah, that just might be also just like on the paper too, and just because we have access to really great cameras now, they're just in our pockets. But back then, photographers would have really nice cameras, but you'd go and you'd get like a Brownie or like a small camera that wouldn't necessarily produce incredible images. But
Okay.
You have some film from like at the beginning of photography, and it's clear and sharp, like tintypes.
Yeah.
There's some photos that are better than the ones we have today.
Huh. Do you ever do anything with pinhole cameras?
I've got one.
Yeah.
I went through my pinhole and toy camera phase for a little bit. No, I don't do it as often anymore. I use a lot of old digital cameras now to supplement that. So
That is a tiny little camera.
Yeah, so like really like early 2000s like digital stuff, because I think that's where we're going to be moving after film. People are going to start looking for an older way to document, more nostalgic, and it has a look, but it's also, you're not tied to the cost of processing and developing film.
Okay, so you just handed me a camera that's like the size of a pack of cards. So your prediction for photography in the near future is like, it's kind of like splitting the difference between the super purity of film photography that then you have to get developed versus just how fast and kind of like not worthless, but you know, each particular photo kind of means nothing of photo. So you're thinking like digital cameras are going to be what's going to become really popular?
People enjoy the tactileness of using something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that also with using these digital cameras that people are going to want to, and I think people have been printing out their photos and viewing them in like photo albums, putting them on your wall. There's definitely a huge difference in viewing something on your phone than actually holding it and manipulating it in your hands.
Yeah. Having it bigger, having it in your home as like a piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're special too. They're memories, and they need to be cherished.
Yeah, and the thing, I guess if it's on your phone, it's usually just you flipping back through your camera roll, just you enjoying things randomly, as opposed to like other people being in your home enjoying it with you.
But I mean, I'm sure it'll change too. Like, I know that some of my friends like to make PowerPoints and share them in slideshows, and it's just, there's a way that we can gather around photos, which I think is really special.
People are doing PowerPoints?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that was still a program that people had on their computers. So what do you mean people are making PowerPoints to like share photos around?
Yeah, or just like a PowerPoint night, you know, everyone makes their own PowerPoint to show off a fun topic. Or
Really? Tell me more about that. This is what the kind of parties is like, people come equipped with a PowerPoint to share around?
Yeah, I don't know how popular this is in like the, you know, not artsy people, but yeah, you know, you can have a night where everyone brings their own PowerPoint on whatever topic they want to share. Or I'm working on one of my most recent trip to Thailand. I was over there in March, so I'm working on, it will eventually be an actual book, but as a fun way to share my trip, I'm making a PowerPoint that I can invite everyone over and kind of look through all the photos.
So that's very much like, you know, I mean, you wouldn't remember this, but I guess in the 70s and 80s, people would go to somebody's house after a vacation and like show their slides, right? And you don't have to sit there in the living room and click through and be relegated to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the next step forward.
That's so funny that people are now gone back to that, but that you have to prepare it ahead of time. Everybody comes equipped with a PowerPoint, like homework.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your trip to Thailand. What kind of things did you shoot there?
So for a while I was bringing my DSLR, the camera I use for work, but I wanted to shoot only film over there, so I brought my Nikon F4, a 35mm camera, a Mamiya 645, which was 120, and then I brought that digital camera, and I hadn't been over there for about 7 years, so it was coming back to it and kind of seeing it again and trying to like remember places I had been.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I only really developed my photographic style in the last 4 or 5 years. So having learned and shooting all these buildings in the American South, going over there and shooting buildings and people and places over there, it was really interesting to kind of see how different these places are, but also like the architecture and just the style of living it's very different.
Yeah.
It was very cool to see how my work translated.
Are there things so in the last few years that you feel like you've learned formally about composing in your camera that helped you on this trip?
Yeah, it's more of a feeling, just because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to a school, or I didn't learn from like a course. It's all mainly feeling and looking at these buildings, and I don't know if I can really describe it, but now for a long time I didn't know what I was shooting, and I figured it out now.
Yeah. Were you in a city there, or were you traveling out into the countryside too?
It was mainly in the city. That's where my family lives, in Bangkok.
Okay.
But we did travel a little bit outside into the country and towards the ocean, so I got to see a little bit of everything.
Did you find that, so being out in the rural areas, is it the same feeling of here, of like things being very old and kind of nostalgic, and then there's over time things being torn down and modernized? Is it the same there?
It felt different, because definitely I felt a little lost when I was in the city, and I was wondering if it was because I was in a different country, but I think it was just because I was in a really big metropolitan area, because as soon as we went out to the country, I kind of found my pace again, and I was seeing the same structures and signs and like the same compositional elements.
Yeah.
But in the city, rather than stuff getting torn down and rebuilt, there was a lot more layering. So when, I guess around here, I've seen something get old and eventually gets torn down and replaced with something new. But there, you would just start building on top of the old stuff. So you could start looking at these buildings and you could really like read into the past of what it used to be and how it changed, and it just keeps layering forward.
Oh. They make the buildings taller and wider?
Or and like using different materials too. Like there's a lot more hodgepodginess, like just kind of also utilizing what you have, and it starts to get more dense and more compact. Like you'll see too, the power lines there are really crazy, because when you run a new one, you just run it over the old one. So you've got power lines that are just big bird's nests of just wires.
Oh, I have seen that. I wondered why.
Yeah, It's just easier to run a new line than figure out where the old one used to be.
So I wanted to talk about just professionally. You have kind of 3 things that are either recent or current things that I wanted to talk about. So first of all, you had a show in Brunswick that was from March 4th through April 9th, and it was in a place called the Soglo Gallery. Is that right?
That's right. The Soglo Gallery is run by Linda Gallagher. She has half of it's an art gallery, the other half is a theater where she does local performing arts and
how
plays.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful space, and Linda gave me the opportunity to have my first solo exhibition there.
How did that come about? Did you reach out to her, or she found you?
We had been friends and worked together for a couple of years, and we had just recently helped put on a show for my late friend Raymond Dumas, and during putting his exhibition together, she offered that I could do one too.
How did it go to get your things together to physically hang up all your art?
It was wonderful. It's been one of the most gratifying experiences I've had, just because for a long time I would take photos and kind of squirrel them away and just keep them to myself, which is the opposite of what I try to preach. So being able to lay out the photos and get them framed and eventually make a book to go with the show, it was amazing, and now I can't wait to do it again.
How many pieces did you have?
Framed works, I think I had over 35.
Wow.
And then there was also 3 slideshows, one on a TV, one on a CRTV, one on an iMac, and then I did a Stephen Shore-esque exhibit with, I think, like 40 4x5s on the wall.
Must be a big space.
Oh, it's huge.
That's cool. Wow. How did it go for you choosing the way to frame them and display them? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was fun. The way that I shoot is I shoot my film, then I put it in a box, and then I wait like a year or 2 and then kind of send it all off at once. So I got to develop all the film that I had shot in the last 2 years right before the show.
Wow.
And then I got to see it all, and then I just printed everything on 4x6s, and then I got to just kind of move things around and physically touch and look at each photo.
It's a long time to live in mystery of the things you've shot, that it piled up for 2 years.
Yeah.
You didn't get to see them.
It's time to send off another bunch.
Yeah.
I want to try to start developing more regularly, but I guess it's easier just kind of put in the back of my mind.
And you touched on, so you had a book from the show, right?
That's right.
How did you get this book published?
I self-published it. I used Blurb, and I'm really happy with it, but I'm looking for other options to make books, because I really enjoy the work of Ed Ruscha, because he really developed art books and making a book into a piece of art. So I love the book that I made, but I also want to make smaller in pieces that people can also take and enjoy, and
Like a handmade
yeah,
kind of book.
definitely.
Yeah, this book is beautiful, and it's called Planet Georgia, and the photo on the front is of our globe in Savannah. That is it from the 70s, maybe the 80s, that globe on Duran that people love, that recently got saved and everybody's
Yeah.
excited about.
If I'm correct, it's from the 40s.
Oh, it is. Okay.
And it was a gas tank, and because it used to be painted like a geography map, so like all the states would be different colors, and there'd be like all the grid lines.
Okay.
And then it got repainted once after, and then it was just repainted again after Parker's bought it.
Yeah, I know everybody locally was really excited that it was saved. People are really nostalgic for it.
Yeah, I was worried for a minute, so I'm glad we still have it.
Well, I love that that's the cover, and then the title Planet Georgia is a really good play on that. And then, so your the kind of the third thing, other than this show in Brunswick and then this book that you have, you currently have some work up at Cafe M on Bay Street, and that will be up through June 21st. People have a lot of time to go see it. And I went by to see it. It looks very cool. And you do have an iMac in the corner kind of showing photos on it. What is the significance of you doing these sort of like extra technology?
Yeah, so with my first exhibition reunion, I had a couple installation pieces, which I feel like bridge the gap between the work on the wall and the viewer, because there's a lot of barriers in the art world for people that they need to overcome to interact with the art. So I wanted to make spaces like a living room and an office where people could enter the space and interact with the photos physically, like going through an album or going through a drawer. So the iMac is almost like a portal that people can tangibly understand the photo better. It's not just a image in a frame on a wall, but it's an object. It's something that you're used to interacting with. And then I feel like people kind of gravitate towards it
So
more.
it's a little bit like for people who walk in and are not maybe typical art gallery type people, it's like a lower barrier of entry for them to be looking at the art.
Exactly.
Oh. How did you get that show at Cafe M?
I got it with Clio the Gallery. I am represented by Clio. I'm one of their flat file artists, and
What does that mean?
it means that I have work, a selected amount of work in their flat file, along with a multitude of other local artists.
Okay, so people could go there anytime and find
And
your work.
look, yeah,
Okay.
they're gonna be opening a new physical space at the once Rule of Three Gallery. So that's very exciting.
And can you tell people where that is?
915 Montgomery Street, off of Montgomery and Bolton. They're opening another photography exhibition that I'm very excited for.
That's great. All right, well, we'll look forward to there being another. That was a cool place for a gallery, also. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that to be reopening. So you got the show at Cafe M through them. That's great.
Yeah, Jeanette is incredible, and they do so much work for local artists, and I wouldn't have gotten the show without her.
Okay, awesome. Well, so people have through June 21st to go to that space, and that Cafe M is really, really good too. So people should be going to that anyway.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful little French bistro on Founders Walk.
Yeah, it's
And
really cool.
Now there's just like in France, there's the bridge with all the little love
Yeah,
locks on
the
them.
locks. Yeah, they sell the locks in there. It's really
Yeah.
sweet. So in your book, Planet Georgia, how can people buy that book if they want it?
So right now, the published book Planet Georgia is out of print. There will be plans to print it in the future, but I will be selling a hand-bound limited edition copy called Savannah, Georgia at Cafe M for the month of June.
Okay, fantastic. And then you have something coming up you'd like to talk about too?
Yeah, I've got another show at the Soglo Gallery in Brunswick, which will be happening the same time I did my first one in March. So it'll be March 2024, and it's going to be photos that I took in Thailand and an installation.
An installation. Cool.
Yeah.
You're working on that? Is
Yeah,
it?
I'm still working on it.
All right.
I don't know what it'll be yet, but there's going to be a couple installation pieces, a lot of photography, and another book will be made for the show.
Great. Well, yeah, it sounded like it was a really huge space, so that's exciting to think. I can't wait to see all your photos from Thailand. Do you have any idea what your name for the show is going to be?
No clue.
Okay. You seem like you're kind of into puns, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Okay, well, Nathaniel, this has been lovely talking to you. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Any final words about Savannah art scene or anything?
I'm just so happy to be part of it. I'm so glad to have been on this show, and don't forget to print your photos.
I love that as a parting words. Everybody enjoy your photos and print them, and then maybe gather your friends together and have a PowerPoint and share your photos as well.
Have a PowerPoint party.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been Nathaniel Thompson. Hey, doing a little musical interlude now. I'm playing Pop Song by local synth band Barabaro. I interviewed their frontwoman Veronica Garcia Melendez a few months ago, and this is from their 2020 album Dance, which you can find online. You can Google them and you can purchase their album online. Next up on WRUU, That Old Savannah Magic from 4 to 6 p.m. It's a variety show featuring Savannah history, radio theater, interviews, and music.
You are listening to WRUU LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.